What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Toma Todito Boxing Show. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. I always open and close my shows with gratitude, and I mean it. I mean it each and every time that I say these words because I am grateful. Thank you guys for lending your time, for lending an ear, and for continuing to support the show. It continues to grow, and I continue to do my part to educate myself, to stay active within the sport, and to continue doing my research. So I bring you, hopefully, a different perspective as it relates to the sport of boxing, and hopefully I generate some new dialogue and some new points of views that you could consider and utilize whenever you're talking the sport with your buddies or at work or with your family members, with your loved ones, or when you're watching the fight. Hopefully there's some new dialogue that I could generate for you in a different point of view rather than the typical bias and the typical negativity that exists out there, right? The clout chasing, the headline grabbing type stuff that we're accustomed to seeing. This episode, I want to talk about the shakeup that just happened within the 130-pound division earlier today, and that has to do with Shakur Stevenson. Shakur Stevenson's going to be facing Robson Conceicao tomorrow, Friday. Now, what shakeup am I talking about? If you haven't heard, if you haven't read the headlines, the weigh-in happened earlier today. Yep, this is a Friday evening show that Top Rank is putting on, not a typical Saturday main event, but this is a main event, and it's going to be on Friday. Now, Shakur Stevenson, who was the WBC by defeating Oscar Valdez, the WBC champ, he lifted the title from Oscar Valdez. And the WBO champ at 130 pounds, he lifted that title from Jamel Herring. He lost the titles on the scale. The weigh-in happened today. Robson Conceicao comes in at 129.6 pounds. Shakur Stevenson comes in at 131.6. A 2-pound difference. No harm, no foul. The WBC supervisor and the WBO supervisor are on hand, obviously, during the weigh-in, and they advise Shakur and his team that they have 2 hours to be able to cut and meet the weight of 130 pounds so he could retain the titles. They immediately bring the screen in front of the scale so Shakur could try to reweigh and shed the remaining clothing he had on, his trunks, and try to reweigh so they could gauge the loss that he needed to accomplish within the 2-hour parameter so he could retain the titles. Right as they're bringing the screen, the team waves it off. Shakur says he's not doing it. He refused to continue to drain and to reweigh at a later time during today, and he was stripped of the titles. Some people are reporting vacated. Some people are reporting stripped. Whichever way you look at it, he lost the titles on the scale, and it sucks. It sucks. The finger pointing's already out there. The finger pointing, the critiques, the hate, right off the bat. How unprofessional, how this, how that, blah, blah, blah. He didn't take this camp serious, and whatever it may be. Shakur Stevenson immediately addressed it, went to Twitter, immediately addressed it, and said that he's been making every single one of his weight cuts, and it continues to get harder and harder for him, and he was unable to push through on this one. And by that same token, he announced that this will be his final fight at 130 pounds, and he will be taking his talents one division north to the already heavily stacked division, which is the lightweight division at 135. Shakur Stevenson just threw his name into the shark-infested waters that is the 135-pound division. A division which has seen a lot of the talent exit recently one division north of the 135, going to 140 by the likes of Ryan Garcia, successfully arriving and successfully starting his campaign at 140. Teofimo Lopez was also successful as he begins to campaign at 140. Jose Pedraza and Richard Comey, they also took their talents to 140 pounds. And you already have Josh Taylor there, who recently vacated a couple titles. And he was the last undisputed champ at that division. He recently vacated titles. You have a Jack Catterall there. You have Jose Ramirez. You have Jose Chon Cepeda. You have Regis Prograis. It's a heavy division at 140. So what's left at 135? Kambosos and Haney are about to get on the rematch. You have Pitbull Cruz. You have all that up and coming talent like Rayo Valenzuela. You have Tank Davis, who still campaigns at 135 and 140. I mean, Vasily Lomachenko. It's crazy. Now Shakur Stevenson's going to be campaigning. You have Jojo Diaz and Camarón Cepeda, who are about to face off against one another late October in that division. It's a stacked, shark-infested division, 135. And now you throw Shakur Stevenson in the mix. Scary. Just scary. With all that said, that's for the future. For his next fight, he has relinquished the WBC and WBO title. Lost them on the scale, vacated, stripped, what have you. The main point here is that the fight is going to go on. There's definitely some disdain between these two fighters. Shakur Stevenson is not going to want to take a loss. He already lost the titles, but he's moving on. He's a professional in the sense that he's going to continue making a legacy for himself. So he's going to go out there and try to knock the head off of Robson Conceicao. Conceicao, however, the stakes have risen for him because, yes, he was already fighting for both titles, but now the pressure has shifted because Shakur no longer has to retain those titles. Now he just has to show up and fight. All the pressure lies on Conceicao now and Robson to come out victorious so he could have his hand raised and walk out as a unified champion for the 130-pound division. The former gold medal winner from Brazil has the opportunity to just squeeze out a victory one way or another tomorrow night and walk out as a unified champ in the 130-pound division. He feels that he should have been crowned against Oscar Valdez. There was a lot of controversy behind that matchup with him and Oscar Valdez, and this is the opponent that both of these fighters share in common. Look at how Shakur Stevenson fought Oscar Valdez and the way that fight went. That was basically Shakur Stevenson just outsmarting, outclassing, picking Oscar Valdez apart. In a fight where Oscar just, no matter what he tried, he had very little success, but no matter what he tried, he was just best at it. Shakur was always a step ahead of Oscar Valdez in that fight, and that's how he took the WBC title from him. Same type of thing where he took the fight to Jamel Herring. It was a lot different because Shakur Stevenson was a step ahead of Oscar Valdez and picked him apart. Against Jamel Herring, he just went at him. He went at him with disdain and stopped him. He wanted to show that he was that much better than Jamel Herring and announced his arrival in the 130-pound division as a champion, lifted that title in crazy fashion by stopping Jamel Herring, the longest reigning 130-pound champion at that time. The card is stacked, by the way, with up-and-coming talent. You got Bruce Carrington fighting Jose Angel. You got Jahai Tucker, who's also an up-and-coming fighter. He's fighting Jose Luis Sanchez. You have Andy Vences on the card. And you have, of course, silver medalist Keyshawn Davis. Keyshawn Davis, if you recall, and you look at my old catalog, I was covering the Summer Olympics, and where he faced Andy Cruz in the final, an old foe of his who he's never been able to beat when it related to amateur competition, Andy Cruz out of Cuba. Andy Cruz ended up getting awarded the gold medal. Keyshawn came up as a runner-up, and I really thought Keyshawn did enough to pull off that victory. You could go back and check out my coverage on that Olympic matchup, and here he is, Keyshawn Davis in the pro ranks, doing big things. The businessman is his moniker, and I'm excited to see how his career continues to play out. Let's go back to the main event. Shakur Stevenson. Keys to win this fight, just be Shakur Stevenson. I feel like there's less pressure on him. He's very good at executing from any angle that he chooses. He doesn't play the real estate game where it's a mental warfare of who's giving up ground. He takes it. He gets in your face. He takes the fight to you. And he delivers in high volume. And he's accurate. Every punch counts for Shakur Stevenson. He makes every punch count. And if he throws 3 punches, either all 3 land or 2 of the 3, but he's not going to waste them. He's very accurate, very effective, very smart in the ring. And he could fight anywhere in the ring. To date, he has not been bested at any one position that he tends to find himself in within the ring, whether he's against the ropes, whether he has the opponent against the ropes, whether he seems to be on his bike, or whether he's fighting in the center of the ring. If he becomes a counterpuncher or the aggressor, Shakur Stevenson tends to find a way to gain control and effect his attack. By the same token, he's a disruptor. He disrupts the opponent's game plan. He's very good at reading guards. He's very good at manipulating the opponent. And it was very evident when he fought Jamel Herring. It was very evident when he fought Oscar Valdez. With Jamel Herring, you could go back and watch that fight, and time and again, he would pitter-patter with a right hand or throw a stiff right hand to Jamel Herring's guard as he's protecting himself. And he would do it on purpose. And he would follow it up with the same hand, with the same right hand, double up on that hand, and follow that pattern on that punch to the gloves, follow it with a right hook to the ear, which would also be partially protected by Herring. At that point, his body shifts in that direction, and he would follow it up with a third looping left hook to the exposed ear in the exposed temple of Jamel Herring. Masterclass. Similar with Oscar Valdez. He would flinch. He would trigger Oscar Valdez into thinking that he's about to lunge forward, slightly move back out of position, and bait Oscar Valdez to throw something heavy so he could catch him on the reset and off his footing. While Oscar Valdez is off balance, Shakur would slightly move to the side and pepper him. Very, very, very smart fighter. What about Robson Conceicao? Robson Conceicao is a fighter that stands his ground and likes to take away the opponent's real estate. He continues to walk forward, walk forward, walk forward. When the opponent posts a threat and starts hitting him back, he refuses to step backwards. He stands his ground and follows up with a counterattack of volume punching. Suppressive fire. When has he been in trouble? When he fights backwards, walking backwards. So how do I see this fight playing out regardless of the drama of the titles, regardless of what was at stake and who the titles happen to be at stake for and so forth? The common opponent in Oscar Valdez is Oscar Valdez. Look at what Shakur did to Oscar Valdez, who's a high-level fighter, and look at how Robson Conceicao, in public opinion and in many's opinion, Robson Conceicao should have had that victory. But he didn't. The judges gave the nod to Oscar Valdez. And even though it may not be easy to be okay with that, for some, just go back and watch the fight. Aside from the one judge who gave it a 117-110, which that was a completely disgusting score for the type of fight that they had in front of each other, the 115-112 scores pose a little bit better of an argument and discussion as far as what they were looking at, what those two judges were looking at, Omar Minton and Chris Tellis. 115-112 in the favor of Oscar Valdez, giving them a unanimous decision. But that 117-110 had no place in that fight. It wasn't that type of fight. So that's where the controversy begins, right? And the accusations that it was a given, that blah, 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 this and that. Okay, I get it. Robson Conceicao, go back and watch his fight with Luis Coria, and then you tell me if he has a mouth to open and a finger to point at Oscar Valdez when he himself got gifted a victory. Do I feel that Oscar Valdez was gifted? That 117-110 is definitely questionable. The 115-112 I could argue. Because you look at the way that the fight played out. Oscar Valdez wasn't a one-sided fight. I feel that Robson Conceicao was outpointing, outpunching, and damaging Oscar Valdez. And Oscar Valdez was the heavily marked fighter. His face showed the effect of Robson Conceicao's punches and the accumulation of punches that he managed to land. But Oscar Valdez continued to fight and take the fight to Robson Conceicao. Just like he tried against Shakur, but he was getting picked apart with Shakur, including dropped. There was an ebb and flow between Valdez and Conceicao where Oscar Valdez, every time he would go on a surge, he caught Conceicao with heavy, heavy leather, heavy punches that may have very well set him down, knocked him down, or possibly even knocked him out, if positioning would have been just inches different. That's how heavy of punches Oscar Valdez was landing. The heavier punches, he gave the judges and the crowd different looks, while Robson Conceicao stuck to the same game plan of boxing from the outside and taking the fight that way to Oscar Valdez, pressuring by standing his ground and trying to walk Valdez back. Valdez didn't give him that gift. He didn't give him that pleasure of just getting walked back. Valdez got on his bike, boxed from the outside. He became a counterpuncher at times. He became the aggressor at times. He became a brawler at times. He became a counterpuncher. He gave so many different looks, which have a two-sided argument. To some people, what Robson Conceicao was doing that night completely eliminated whatever game plan Eddie Reynoso and Valdez had. The counter to that argument is that Valdez had effect and was effective by being able to adapt and switch up so many and give Conceicao so many different looks. That's where he found the success in landing those big gutty punches that he was landing on the body and on the head. Punches that he was landing too far in between, I get it. But they were the bigger punches, the heavier punches that were shifting momentum in his favor throughout the fight. And Robson would stay consistent, doing one of the two, boxing from the outside or trying to pressure and walk him back. Valdez continued to switch up his styles throughout the fight. So I could see why the judges, those two judges that had decent scores, would give it and be impressed by what Valdez was doing. Everything else, we put that aside. Let's talk about Conceicao and Luis Coria. up-and-coming fighter Luis Coria at that time when they fought was in October of 2020. In that fight, Conceicao was down in round 2. Go back and watch the fight, because this fight with him against Luis Coria is what I see happening and why I see Shakur Stevenson being victorious tomorrow. Luis Coria did what most boxers haven't been able to do to Conceicao to date, at least in the professional ranks. People that stand their ground and stand and bang with them. Yes, we've seen Xavier Martinez. We saw Valdez do that with them at times. Luis Coria stood and banged with Conceicao and did something that Conceicao does to fighters, which is taking the real estate. He either takes ground or stands his ground. Luis Coria did the same thing too. And this is a young Luis Coria against a very decorated amateur Olympic fighter in Conceicao. Young Coria took the fight to Conceicao, stood his ground, and began to walk Conceicao back. And that's how he managed to land that big thudding punch that dropped Conceicao in round 2. Aside from that, you look at the scores and it was a 94-93 and 2 judges had it 95-92. Giving the decision to Conceicao. The knockdown is 2 points that should have been favored for Coria. And there was 2 point deductions against Conceicao, one in round 4 and one in round 6 for low blows. Those rounds were so tight, as was the majority of the fight, with the back and forth phone booth, head to head or forehead to forehead style fight that they were having against each other, that you could make the argument easily that Coria should have won a 10-8 round in that 4th round, a 10-9 with the point deduction 10-8. That's 2 10-8 rounds for him. And round 6, the same thing. He would have walked away with 3 10-8 rounds. Instead, by the time that the fight ended, it was a 10-round fight. They only awarded 2 rounds to Coria in the entire fight. That was disgusting in itself. So, there's no need for pointing fingers and claiming robberies and this and that and blah, blah, blah on behalf of the Conceicao camp, because they've been involved in multiple fights like that. What else? I'm looking at the deduction in points and low blows. 2 points that were taken away from Conceicao in that fight. He lost a point for hitting behind the head in round 9 against Oscar Valdez. So it's not a first time. There were some low blows also there during that Valdez fight. With Coria, numerous headbutts on behalf of Conceicao. What am I trying to get at? I'm not saying Conceicao is a dirty fighter, but he tends to hit low. With Xavier Martinez, he held his head down several times. With Coria, he pushed his head down several times. With Oscar Valdez, he would do the same thing, holding behind the head, pushing the head down. Body punches that would be slightly low of the acknowledged level or the allowed level of hips, of the waist. Slightly low. He lost 2 points. It's not the first time that he's been admonished for that. Numerous warnings that have been given to him since that fight, from Coria dating to now. He's not a dirty fighter, but he is a very seasoned fighter in which he's going to pull those punches and draw close lines. Just ride the line. He'll be riding that line enough, and if the refs end up catching it, they'll admonish it. Very, very smart fighter who will get away with whatever he can. If he has a chance against Shakur Stevenson, No, he doesn't need to be a dirty fighter. He's not a dirty fighter. But he does need to pull out all the stops. Every little bit of his experience needs to come out against Shakur Stevenson. The clinching, the holding, the slight, that disruption to the flow of the fight is what Robson Conceicao is going to need to bring, along with his volume punching, because he throws a lot of combinations and a lot of suppressive fire, and he's going to need that. And he counter punches in volume as well. So he's going to need that in order to disrupt the flow of Shakur Stevenson's fight. Shakur's going to bring the fight to him, and that's going to be a problem for Conceicao because he doesn't like to fight backwards. Walking backwards. He likes to walk his opponents down. Shakur doesn't walk backwards. He stands his ground, and he will stand and bang and counter you without giving an inch of real estate. That's what Correa did, and Conceicao found trouble when that happened to him. That's the fight. That's the fight that is giving me the glimpse and the hunch that Shakur Stevenson will be in a little bit of a firefight until he begins to pick Conceicao apart and come out victorious. Unfortunately, he will not walk away with his titles, but he will be able to walk away with his flawless record. To date, Conceicao walks into this fight 17 victories, 1 defeat, that's sole defeat at the hands of Oscar Valdez, 8 knockouts to his favor. Shakur Stevenson walks into this fight 18-0 with 9 knockouts to his credit. Very interesting in the implications of the titles. Vacant title, Shakur wins the victory, keeps his record intact, undefeated, and moves on 1 division north for his next fight. For Conceicao, both titles on the line. Should he be victorious, he'll be able to, after tomorrow, he'll be a unified champion in the 130-pound division and give the first defeat to Shakur Stevenson's career, should he be able to pull this out. Interesting in the sense that Conceicao doesn't back down. Interesting in the sense that he's a gold medal winner. He's a refined boxer, very experienced. Interesting in the sense that how is he going to be able to pull this out against a young boxer who continues to look better and better each time out and seems to have an answer for everything that's presented to him. Super interesting. I hope you tune in. Should be on ESPN if I'm correct. And so check your local listings and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think. Is this going to be a good victory for Conceicao? Do you see it that way, that this is going to be an easy, or not an easy fight, but is this going to be a victory and Conceicao becoming a unified champ by the time the weekend begins? Or is this another Shakur Stevenson masterful performance awaiting us where he's going to pick apart a highly decorated boxer in Robson Conceicao and continue his ascension 1 division north and start shaking things up there in the lightweight division? The announcement itself is huge enough. Who's not going to want to get into the ring with Shakur Stevenson? A Lomachenko Shakur at 135, imagine that. Lots of things to look forward to. I hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you guys again for tuning in each time in each episode. Thank you guys for the downloads, for the love, for the support. And don't forget to comment. Follow me on Instagram, the Tomatodito Boxing Shows on Instagram. You could find me on Twitter. Let's talk. Let's exchange. Let's talk. Let's converse during the fights. Let me know how you have it. And I'll see you guys on the recap episode. And don't forget to tune in. Spread the word. Tell your coworkers, your loved ones, your friends, your buddies. And let's generate some more dialogue. Everything's getting really interesting. And I can't wait. And another big announcement that I saw is that apparently both camps, one of Shakur's good friends and Bud Crawford, Terrence Crawford, and Errol Spence camp have come to an agreement, and it looks like the fight is slated to take place November 19th, if I'm correct. So it looks like the camps have come to an agreement, and it looks like they were... It's as sure a shot as possible because they've already made the announcement of a date. And if it's so, and in the coming days we continue to hear more news and more developments regarding that, how exciting is that? The long-awaited matchup between Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. I mean, we could dissect that and do multiple episodes around those two, dissecting what should be a super mega fight for the welterweight division and for the boxing world in its entirety. Spence, Crawford, reportedly have come to an agreement, and we should be seeing that here in a couple months' time. Thank you guys again. Shakur Conceicao taking place Friday, tomorrow, and I can't wait to see it because, man, Shakur just shook up not just the 130-pound division with his losing the titles at the scale, but now is about to shake up 135 division with his announcement that his very next fight will be his arrival into the lightweight division. I can't wait to see how this all plays out. But first, Conceicao and Shakur have a big task at hand in front of each other. And that's going to come out and develop tomorrow night. Thank you guys again. The Toma Todito Boxing Show. This is Head Cali. Have a good night. Salud.